"Ilo, this isn't just a message." "No," he said. "It's a dream that never got sung." Chapter 15. Notes from a Sleepless Mind. The piano stood at the heart of the satellite's quiet world, surrounded by fragments of a mind that had tried, desperately, to remember something lost. Emery sat on the bench, dust puffing softly as she shifted her weight. The keys were cool beneath her fingertips. Real ivory. A rarity now. She played a scale. Softly. Each note rang true, but there was something else beneath them. A shadow, a vibration, a feeling. As if the piano remembered what had once been played and wanted to speak again. Nilo padded silently around the room, inspecting the handwritten pages. He crouched beside a sheet that had been pinned with a rusted nail to the wall. It showed the same melody repeated again and again, each time with a small correction. A bent note, a slurred rest, a broken measure. The composer hadn't forgotten the tune. They had never fully known it. Emery played a second time, eyes closed. This time she let herself wander. She didn't try to read the music. She let the tune from the dream world guide her, letting memory and intuition shape her fingers. Notes came out unsure at first, then stronger. A passage of minor chords, a repeating arpeggio, a soft fall at the end like someone exhaling. And as she played, the satellite responded. The walls vibrated gently. The air grew warmer. Lights flickered and steadied. Something was listening. Then, from a panel behind the piano, a compartment opened with a soft mechanical hiss. Inside sat a narrow cylinder, maybe the size of a thermos. Emery reached in and pulled it out. She turned it over. Etched on its side were the words, "Seed Memory, Vesper 4. Nilo hopped onto the bench beside her. Another one. Emery nodded slowly, turning the cylinder in her hands. But this one's quieter, like it didn't know it was a dream yet. It wasn't finished, Nilo said. The one who lived here couldn't express it, couldn't make it real. She looked down at the pages scattered across the floor, at the scrawled music, the aching lines scratched into the wall. I dreamed it, but I can't play it. But they tried, Emery whispered, and that's enough. She cradled the seed cylinder against her chest. It pulsed once, a soft beat, like something stirring from sleep. Back aboard the hollow finch, they stored the Vesper, 4 seed in the memory alcove beside the first. It shimmered faintly, then went still. Another dream, rescued from the silence. That night, Emery didn't read poetry aloud. She played the piano. Chapter 16, Between the Keys. The music filled the hollow finch like candlelight. Emery had set the keyboard in the galley, an old digital synth salvage from a trade on Trinaris, patched into the ship's audio system. It didn't replicate the satellite's piano perfectly, but it sang well enough. Warm, patient. She played late into the ship's artificial night cycle. No melodies from books this time. No training. Just her hands and what the ship remembered. Improvised echoes of the dream melody she'd felt in Iria's Hollow and again on the satellite. Each time it returned with something new, like a stone skipping over water, making different ripples in every world it passed through. Nilo lay on a pillow beside the greenhouse window, eyes half shut. It's strange, he murmured between notes. We're not discovering dreams. They're discovering us. Emery didn't answer. She played softer now, fingers drifting over the lower keys like they were made of silk. You're letting them speak through you, he said. Emery looked up. Maybe they just needed a voice. Or a listener. Outside, stars passed slowly, undisturbed. They were entering a dense corridor of stellar mist. Ribbons of particulate gas and frozen dust swirling through open space. Their path wasn't charted. But that was the point now, wasn't it? She turned to the console and ran a passive scan through the mist. A flicker, not mechanical, not gravitational, just presence. The screen lit up with faint returns. Something was in the mist. No signal, no engine flare, but a structure. Part organic, part metallic. A station, perhaps, or the wreckage of one. Emery looked closer. Not wreckage, a cocoon. An object shaped like a spiral shell hovered in the stardust, its outer layer textured like stone and bone at once. And through a crack in its surface, something flickered with light, slow, timed pulses. Nilo joined her at the console, ears perked. That looks alive. Or dreaming. The Finch adjusted course automatically, as if it had already made the decision before Emery had touched the controls. She narrowed her eyes at the spiral. What do you say, Nilo? One more fragment. He stretched his front paws. We've come this far. Might as well follow the melody. Chapter 17. The Spiral Sleep. The hollow Finch approached the structure cautiously, though the space around it was unusually calm. No gravitational turbulence, no radiation interference, just silence so deep it seemed to slow thought itself. The cocoon-like object rotated slowly, as if floating through time rather than space. Its spiral shell glistened with dew-like crystals, and faint pulses of gold passed along its ridges in rhythm with something internal. As they drew closer, Emery could feel in her chest a thrum, like a distant drumbeat. Not menacing, steady, measured, alive. Organic? She asked aloud. Nilo crouched beside the console, tail swishing slowly. Partly. The core's warm. There's a pressure seal, an air pocket in the center, but no sign of life as we know it. Dream life? Maybe, Emery murmured. The ship docked itself with surprising ease. Magnetic clamps extended toward a ring on the spiral's edge, one that hadn't been visible until they arrived, as though the cocoon had offered it to them. With suits donned and instruments prepped, they entered. Inside, the spiral's interior glowed faintly, lit by bioluminescent threads running along the walls. The air was thick with a scent Emery couldn't place, cool like mint, but earthy like the soil after rain. The walls were lined with what looked like translucent pods. Some were empty, some weren't. Emery stepped closer to one and shined her wrist light into it. A figure floated inside, not human, delicate, with skin that shimmered like mother of pearl and 4 hands folded over its chest. The creature's face was serene, dreaming. A soft melody hummed through the chamber, vibrating faintly in her bones. It was a lullaby, but not one she knew. The same phrase repeated over and over, like the echo of a memory from another world. They're in stasis, she whispered. All of them, kept asleep by the structure, sustained by the song. Nilo padded between 2 pods, then stopped. Emery, he called softly. This one's different. She approached. Inside the pod was a child. Not alien, not human, but both. A hybrid. Skin flushed with color, eyes half open as though caught between waking and sleep. And in her hand, curled against her chest, was a tiny, glowing seed. The same kind they'd received from Yvain. Emery stepped back slightly, breath catching her throat. She's not in the dream, she said. She's the source of it. Nilo's ears twitched. The ship's picking up something. You should hear this. They tapped into the signal coming from the spiral's core. It wasn't code. It wasn't music. It was a voice. Small, young, clear. I'm holding the dream until someone is kind enough to carry it. Chapter 18. Kindness as a Vessel. The voice echoed in the chamber, soft but unmistakable, repeating in a gentle loop. I'm holding the dream until someone is kind enough to carry it. It wasn't a command, not even a request. It was a promise, nestled in longing. A child's voice wrapped in infinite patience. Emery reached out and placed a hand on the surface of the pod. The shell was cool to the touch, but within it, warmth radiated. The seed the child held pulsed gently in time with the low, ambient hum of the structure. Whatever this spiral cocoon was, organic or constructed, it was protecting her, preserving her dream. She's been waiting, Emery said quietly. Longer than we've been alive, probably. Nilo paced slowly around the pod, glancing at the other chambers. And the others? Are they part of the dream? Or are they fragments? Emery didn't answer right away. Her eyes scanned the pods, so many of them. Each one a sleeper, each with its own faint energy signature. No distress, no signs of trauma, just stasis, stillness. They're not fragments, she finally said. They're memories, the kind that get buried under years and noise. Someone once dreamed them, and she gathered them here, gave him a place to rest. Nilo flicked his tail. You think she's the first dreamer? Or the last? I don't know, Emery said. But she's a keeper, a guardian, like Yvain but younger, maybe older too in a way. The lights in the chamber dimmed, then slowly brightened again. The rhythm of the melody shifted, becoming something more like a question. Another pulse from the child's pod, this time brighter. The voice returned, this time no longer a recording, but live. "Will you carry it?" Emery felt the weight of those words drop into her chest like a pebble in a still pond. "I don't know where it leads," she whispered. "You don't have to," the voice said. "Just take the first step." She looked at Nilo. He met her eyes without a word, then nodded once. "We always did fly on instinct," he said. Emery placed both hands on the pod. A seam opened down the center. No alarms, no hissing gas, just a quiet unfolding. Inside, the child didn't wake, but her hand moved, extending the seed outward. Emery accepted it with both hands. The moment she did, the spiral shell around them shifted. Walls shimmered, lights dimmed, and then a map, projected above them in delicate strands of glowing thread. The chamber filled with lines, routes between stars, intersections between worlds, each marked not by coordinates, but by symbols. Some glowed brighter than others. Some flickered, uncertain. Each one, a dream waiting to be heard. Chapter 19, The Dream Map. The map filled the spiral chamber like a soft constellation, but it was no star chart Emery had ever seen. The lines didn't trace the typical hyperlanes, and there were no familiar system labels. Instead, each node shone with its own hue, some violet, others golden, a few with faint, flickering pulses like thoughts forming mid-dream. Emery reached out instinctively. As her finger passed through a glowing point, a burst of sensation filled her mind. Laughter and rain, footsteps on wet stone, the scent of almond smoke, a voice whispering a lullaby in a language she didn't know. Then it was gone. She turned to Nilo, who sat silently below the map, head tilted as if listening to a hidden rhythm. "It's a cartography of memory," he said quietly. "A forgotten emotion. That one you touched, someone once dreamed it, then let it go." Emery's hand trembled as she touched another point. This time, silence. A hospital bed. The faint beep of a monitor. A woman holding someone's hand. The feeling of a goodbye never spoken aloud. She stepped back. The child in the pod remained asleep, her face relaxed, one hand still extended where the seed had passed. But now a new warmth radiated from the pod, as if she knew, somehow, that the map had been seen and that the dream was now moving forward. "What happens if no one visits these places?" Emery asked. Nilo's voice was soft. "They fade. Can they be restored?" "I think that's what we've been doing all along," he said, gathering what would have been lost. Back aboard the hollow Finch, the spiral structure slowly withdrew the docking ring, releasing them like a sigh. The pod door had resealed, and the child was again in perfect stillness. The dream was safe. The map had embedded itself in the Finch's star logs, coded not in navigation data, but as harmonics within the ship's memory core. No one could read it through charts, only through listening. Emery stood before the console, watching the soft waveforms pulse. "What now?" she whispered. Nilo stretched on the dashboard, blinking slowly. "We pick a point," he said, "and go where the dream wants to be remembered." That night, Emery did not play music. She simply opened the memory alcove and looked at the 3 seeds now resting there, each glowing gently, each a story, a song, a thread in a vast web of unspoken hopes. Outside, the stars waited. But now Emery understood. They weren't destinations. They were reminders. Chapter 20, Whisper of the Unfound. The hollow Finch resumed its journey, but it was no longer wandering. Each movement now held a kind of quiet purpose. The ship didn't follow coordinates so much as resonance. Somewhere deep in the Finch's systems, maybe in its memory core, maybe in something older, those dream frequencies thrummed like compass stars. Emery sat at the helm with one palm resting lightly against the control pad, eyes half closed, listening. The dream map wasn't a thing she could decipher with charts. It wasn't a puzzle to be solved. It was a kind of music, and her body was learning how to hear it. Each dream they had carried. Yvain's orb, the unplayed piano, the spiral cocoon, had left a tone inside the ship, and now those tones formed chords. They were being led again, this time to a place where even the stars were reluctant to shine. The destination was called Illifon's Edge, though few had ever visited. It was a system on no active freight route, positioned just inside the radius of a collapsed star cluster. Navigation records listed it as unstable, devoid of planetary bodies. But when Emery matched the dream harmonics to the system's coordinates, one note pulsed louder than the rest, a singular, unwavering frequency. It wasn't calling. It was mourning. "Do you hear that?" she asked. Nilo, perched atop the armrest beside her, flicked his ears. A sustained minor sixth, like someone remembering something they lost. The Finch eased into real space at the edge of the system. Before them, debris, not from battle, but from neglect. Ancient orbital rings crumbled in place around a ghost planet, a world half-shattered, its crust split open like a broken shell. But the core still glowed, faintly, like a candle burned to the nub. Emery angled the ship toward the ruins. "That world's dead," Nilo murmured. "Then why is it dreaming?" The ship found a stable orbit above what remained of a citadel on the planetary surface. Most of the towers were rubble, their spires bent like grieving heads. But in the heart of the structure, one building still stood, a dome made of black stone and golden veins, shaped like a heart turned inward. Emery and Nilo descended on foot, suited in soft seal exploration gear. No need for hard vacuum suits. The atmosphere was thin but breathable. The air tasted like stone dust and silence. Inside the dome was a single room, a library, but the shelves were empty. Not just empty, worn, as if each book had once been placed there lovingly, held, remembered, and then forgotten. Gone not from theft, but from erosion. The kind of loss that came not in flame, but in time. At the center of the room stood a plinth. Upon it, a single glass sphere. Emery stepped forward. Inside the sphere was not a dream, but an echo, a repeating image. A woman, sitting in this very chamber, reading a book aloud to someone unseen. Her lips moved. Her expression was tender. No sound, no name, just the image, endlessly repeating. "She was the last one," Emery whispered. Nilo said nothing. The dream was not a request. It was a memory, and it had waited here long enough. Chapter 21. The library that forgot itself. The air inside the dome felt dense, like time had slowed just slightly within its walls. Emery walked slowly among the empty shelves, her hand trailing along their edges. The wood, or what resembled wood, was worn smooth by centuries of touch, by books once pulled and returned, and by silence that had taken their place. She was reading to someone, Emery said, still watching the image within the orb. But that person never appears. Nilo leapt softly onto the plinth and peered into the sphere. Maybe they were never real, or maybe they were a memory already fading when this was recorded. The figure in the orb looped again, turning a page, smiling faintly, lips forming silent words. Or maybe she was trying to read her own memory aloud. Emery murmured, "To keep alive." The room hummed faintly. Beneath their feet, the floor gave off a slow rhythm, like breath or heartbeat, or the creaking of an old ship in deep water. Emery leaned closer to the orb, and this time, when the woman in the vision turned the page, she looked up, right at Emery, eyes wide, not frightened, hopeful. Then, darkness. Emery staggered backward slightly. The orb dimmed. "You saw that, didn't you?" she asked. Nilo gave a slow nod. "She saw you, or something of you. It's not just an echo," Emery whispered. "It's a link. The dream's not gone. It's waiting to be remembered." She looked around the library. All these shelves, they weren't for books. They were for stories. Dreams people once held and forgot to tell again. Nilo's voice was low. "What happens when no one remembers the last story?" Emery picked up the orb carefully. It pulsed once, then steadied. "We carry it," she said. "That's what we do." Back aboard the hollow Finch, Emery placed the orb gently in the memory alcove. As it settled beside the other seeds and fragments, the ship's lights dimmed briefly, then glowed warmer, as if acknowledging a new voice added to its collection of dreams. She sat in her bunk that night, unable to sleep. The stars outside the viewing dome were barely visible, just tiny sparks through the soft clouds of interstellar dust, but they were still there. She watched them quietly, and then she whispered, not to Nilo, not even to herself, but to the stories waiting beyond the map. I'll remember you. Chapter 22. Quiet between the stars. In the stillness after Illifon's edge, the hollow finch sailed without direction for 2 days. Not because the map lacked guidance. On the contrary, it pulsed now with soft, active signals in Emery's console. More dream points than before. Dozens. Maybe more. But it felt improper to rush. So she let the ship drift. Noingans. Just inertia and gravitational drift through a quiet corridor between stars where nothing pressed and nothing called. It was the kind of silence that held meaning. A pause between sentences. A breath between songs. Emery sat in the lounge with a cup of moss-leaf tea in her hands, the scent soft and grounding. Nilo dozed nearby, twitching occasionally as if chasing dreams of his own. The memory alcove glowed faintly in the corner. 3 seeds, 1 orb, each a story, a life, a thread. Emery reached into the alcove and carefully took out the orb from the library dome. It didn't glow quite as brightly as the dream seeds, but it held presence, stillness. She turned it over in her hands, watching the light bend inside it like it was refracting not from a bulb, but from thought. I wonder who she was, she whispered. The orb did not answer, but the image inside returned. A brief shimmer, the woman looking up mid-page, the moment.